Hi, very good evening. It's Dean from Lifestyle. Guys, I'm going to tell you now, the outlook on the global economy is really bad. And I'm going to tell you straight up that, they are coming for another 25% taxes off everybody in Europe, Canada, the US, and other countries around the world that I haven't mentioned. And, all what we're seeing with the rhetoric over in the United States is part of that plan. Tariffs are taxes, and you need to drum that into your head. If America puts 25% tariff on Canada and Canada puts it back on the United States, nothing's changed. And that's what we've seen. And then Trump is saying that he's going to put another 25% on. All what he said at the State of Union address the other day in his speech was a load of lies. I mean, let's go back 6 weeks when he was inaugurated into being the president. Who was standing behind him? Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, three of the most richest men in the world. And then behind him, another 13 billionaires. They don't care about the person on the street. They do not care. They care about themselves and keeping this capital system just barely alive so that they can enjoy the riches of the world. And that's it, plain and simple. All these contracts that Trump is giving out are to millionaires and billionaires. And, it's like I said, who has benefited from any one of those executive orders that Donald Trump has created yet? And I know this is going to hurt the Americans to hear, but in 3 years' time, you'll see what I mean. You'll understand that this isn't about helping Americans. None of these politicians have ever helped in the last 30 years of my knowledge of politics. Anyhow, I mean, if we just look at, 60% of the Americans right now that are in dire straits and live paycheck to paycheck, what help have they received at this moment, 6 weeks in? And I know what people are going to say because they've already said it to me, Gene, give them a bit of time. Well, you can give them as much time as you want. What I see as Donald Trump has done is, can you imagine having a lot of valves and each valve has an effect on the next valve? These are components of the economy and, world trade. And what Donald Trump has come in and done, which another person wouldn't do of intelligence, is try and find out which is the valve which is causing the problem in the system. What he's come in and done is he's twisted every one of those valves and he's taken the system out of equilibrium completely when there was just needed a little adjustment on one of those valves and it would have made things better. But when you come in and meddle with everything all in one go, you create, an out of an equilibrium state. You create chaos. And that's exactly what he's done. He's making enemies all over Europe. He's made enemies with his both neighbours, Mexico and Canada. And look what Europe are doing right now. They are turning their economy into a war economy. Because what we see from our standpoint is Donald Trump aligning himself with the Russian President Putin. Shocking U-turn for the world. And that's exactly what we see. And, as a result, Vanderland, whatever her name is, Furland or whatever her name, the one who runs the, what's it called? Anyhow, she runs the European, what is it? The monetary fund. Anyhow, I think you didn't know one about. She is suggesting throwing in just short of £1 trillion into the war economy over the next coming months, maybe, I don't know. But it's not good. Because who's going to pay for that? Well, as you can see in front of you, Europe must trim its welfare state to build a warfare state. This is what we're going to see all around the world now. You know, I follow what's going on in China, and what's happened in China is a shift from manufacturing in China to manufacturing elsewhere, like Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines, because the labour's cheap there. That's typical of a capitalist system, and anyone that's got, you know, large factories, you know, obviously it's in their interest to produce things cheaper, and even more so now when the tariffs are being issued out left, right and centre. You know, it's a dark world that we're entering right now, and I guarantee you the ones that are going to pay are the ones that have always paid throughout history, and that's the people on the ground, the working class. You know, they have definitely ironed out, you know, the wrinkles where the middle class were. Now, there is only two classes of people, the very rich and the very poor, and the people that can only make, you know, just about ends meet at this point. And we've already lost millions of people that couldn't, who are now probably, who knows where, on the streets, sleeping under bridges, whatever. So, you know, this is warning. They're coming after your money, and they're looking at probably taking another 25% in taxes off you, but in ways that you wouldn't have ordinarily thought about it. A tariff is a tax that goes straight to your government. You don't benefit from that. It goes straight to your government. And the reason why the world is in such a mode right now is because economies, as you probably know, if you've got your ear to the ground and your eyes are open, you will know that the global economy has collapsed. That countries have got so much debt over their GDP that they are physically bankrupt. America's bankrupt. The UK's bankrupt. Most of the countries in Europe are bankrupt, if not all of them, because they're all borrowing money over the GDP level, and that is a clear line that states that, you know, you're bankrupt. They're not insolvent yet. If you was insolvent, then you'd be in court and the money would be demanded off you. But they're not insolvent, they're bankrupt. And that's not good, because the only way that they can recover those debts is by getting, you know, the smart way to do it would be to, okay, structure a plan where the money would be paid off slowly over a long period of time, but stick to the plan. But the only way you can do that is by keeping people in work. And that, you know, the GDP, the gross domestic produce, is a fund that is raised by all the people in work that pay taxes. So if, you know, we are entering, as we are, an era of, you know, more high tech, more robotics coming in. I mean, just look at Elon Musk's robot that he's built. You can purchase it for around £19,000 English sterling, or dollars, I'm not sure. But you can purchase that robot, and it has almost the capability of, you know, a working human. It can do a lot of these jobs that humans do in factories. If we look at the factories today, as opposed to 30 years ago, they are more high-tech and they are more driven by actuation robotics than they ever have been before. And you know what? You will see the least amount of numbers that it required to build those cars. If we go back to the 1930s, there was most people working in the farming industry, you know, on farms. That the farmers were the biggest employees, and most people had jobs on farms. But today, there is very little need for people on farms because of tractors and high-tech GPS equipment that, you know, pretty much drive the tractor around in the most efficient way on that land. So the requirement for human beings, on whole, across the range, is getting less and less. And what is becoming more apparent is that robotics are, okay, the initial layer is dear. They recover, they pay for themselves after a few years. But then after that point, you know, you've got a robot that works 24 hours a day, doesn't take holidays, don't need to go to the toilet during the day and waste, you know, 15, 20 minutes there, and doesn't require holiday pays. Don't go on sick leave. You know, it's perfect from an employee's point of view. But the problem is with this, is that the GDP shrinks. Now, where does the government get the money from when the GDP shrinks? Well, if you've got 70 million people in your country, then one way to increase your GDP as it shrinks would be to tax those people even more. And that's exactly what's happening. But when this happens, what's happening here in the UK is, there is an exodus of millionaires leaving the UK, as well as non-millionaires leaving the UK, because you just physically, at this point in time, can't make ends meet if you're a single person living on your own in this country. And you can barely do it if you are, in a relationship with somebody else and you're sharing the cost of the bills. It still isn't easy to, pay the bills and save, or, go on holiday and things like that. The things that, you were rewarded by in a capital system, you work hard, you're able to do, have that little bit of extra cash. It's no longer the case anymore. You can work as hard as you like. You can work yourself to death. And I've heard of a girl that died because she'd got 3 jobs. And she was finishing one job, going to her next job, and then finishing that and going to her next job, and working like 18, 19 hours a day, and died of exhaustion. We're going to hear more cases of this as time goes on. And I want to make this clear. I am not beating down American people. Quite the opposite. I am trying to warn them of what is coming as a result of Donald Trump's executive orders and his tariffs that he is putting on other countries. Because not only is he making his own country poorer and the citizens of that country poorer, he's also making other countries poorer as a result, because they're retaliating in this trade war that's taking place now on a large scale. Donald Trump hasn't just put tariffs on China, Mexico and Canada. He intends to put tariffs all over Europe, and those tariffs are going to come back. So what does it do? In short term, it brings a lot more money back to the American government, because the people of the country do not benefit. In fact, quite the opposite. They lose out an extra 25% on their earnings. So I think you get the idea of what I'm trying to say. This isn't good. Why all of a sudden are we having to pay more? And it's not a little increase. This is a huge increase. 25%. I mean, over here in the UK, we pay 40%. And people are going to say, how do you work that out? I'll say, well, simply, you tax 20% on your wages. And if you earn over a certain amount, you're taxed 40%. But let's say you just tax 20%. Everything you buy has 20% VAT on it. So you pay your tax on your salary, you pay your tax on whatever you spend the money on. That is 40%. If they put another 25% on that, then it's 65%. You will have to make do with whatever that 40% will allow you to pay. Now, remember, you've got 40% then to live on, or 35%. How are you going to manage? They are squashing us into the ground financially. I need you to think about that. If you want to help support us on this channel, you can. The links are down there. I want to say a huge thanks for those people that yesterday chipped in a few bucks. We managed to cover the cost of that. That was the smaller bill, by the way, from our website provider. It'll keep it going for a little bit, but we do have bigger bills coming in. I will tell you that. That was just the small side of it. Anyhow, all the best to you guys. You take care of your loved ones. Time to start thinking about plan A, plan B, because that time's coming. As always, bye for now.